Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video of mine, where today you're going to hear me yap about another car. This time it's not about the Lancer Evolution again, it's a different one. It's the 911, and specifically it's going to be about what is the best 911 in each generation. I'll get into that in a bit. I just want a quick note. Thank you very much for allowing me to have my first ever video reach 1,000 views, let alone 1,200, and it's slowly climbing, which is impressive. To be honest, I never expected to reach such stupid amount of numbers, and I've always had many videos that came close to it, but I never, reached it. And this video, I guess, just worked out well. So I guess I'll do somewhat same thing, but not really, because it's going to be mostly talking about the best one rather than, what came in each car or each generation. So yeah, but I just want to say thank you. And yeah, moving on to the video. I quickly want to preface the idea that this is not another one of those TikTok kids who are like, oh my god, the Porsche 911 is the best car for no really apparent reason, purely just because it's a Porsche and it's the 911. I'm talking about from a performance standpoint. Ever since the beginning, it has been the sole focus of just being a full out, all out amazing car. And it has stayed true. It's the best car on the Nürburgring. I don't count the AMG 1 because the Formula 1 engine, it's not too fair, but I'm not gonna get into that. The 911 is kind of like the peak of like ultimate performance from a car. It's not asking too much money for what it offers too. I mean, look at Ferraris that ask $1 million and they can somewhat compete up against the 911. It's truly one of the significant cars of our lifetimes and previously going on forth. But I'm going to be mainly taking a look at the best version of 911 in each generation. Now, what do I mean by best? Well, what is the most track capable, or what is the one that can get you around the track the quickest of each generation? In my opinion, that's kind of like the driver's Porsche. And I mean, sure, there's like the ST of the current generation, which uses the best like GT3 RS engine with a six-speed, which is incredible. I would love that in a GT3 RS. Sure, it's not maximizing performance how I would like it, but at least I want some fun in it. But and it's just kind of an interesting car to look at, and each generation is just super intriguing. Like what Porsche has been doing for the past, I'll be honest, like 60, 70 years or so, however old the Porsche is, maybe older. It's quite an impressive feat, and I hope they continue doing it. It's just an incredible car. But yeah, getting into the first generation. The first generation of the 911, that is the 911 Classic. Now, this one, is very popular, especially amongst collectors, but most people say the Carrera RS 2.7 is, the peak or whatever, the one that you want. But by doing a bit of research, they did also the 3.0, or the 3-liter RS Carrera, and that one shaved off more weight and added more power, meaning, and it had more better aerodynamics, which equates to, better performance. So in my honest opinion, this is the best one of this generation. I also quickly forgot to preface that I'm no 911 expert. I just not recently, but I've been around the 911 for a long time, but I never delved deep into, what is the best one. And of course, best is very much a subjective thing, but the 3.0 Carrera RS for the first generation, or the classic 911, is the best one. Moving on to the second generation. The second generation of the 911, otherwise the 930, is kind of a subjective car because it's technically part of the classic 911, but it also is split away from the classic 911. Some people say it's a together thing, some people say it's a separate. I just like it to be separate because it's a different enough car to stand out from one another, and it's a newer version of the classic 911, so it kind of derived far away, but I'm not gonna ramble. The best one is the 911 930 Turbo S WLS. Now the WLS stands for in German Werkfeststein, or in English, Works Performance Increase, which was added on to the last batch of 930s, mainly in Europe. I'm pretty sure none came to America unless it was imported. And it gave, new exhaust pipes, better oil coolers, better front spoilers, better bolt-ons, and some weight savings, of course, which is why it makes it the best one out of all. It was the Widowmaker Plus, if you could say it so. It just, gave more horsepower, more of everything, and less weight. So making it just the best one out of all. And yeah, that's the 930. Moving on to the next generation. Moving on to the third generation. That is the 964. The specific one is the Carrera RS 3.8. But if we want to get into further depth, it would be the Club Sport because it removed like thin carpets or half thin carpets, sound deadening, leather-lined bucket seats. Undercarriage position was changed up with multiple options. Power windows, air conditioning, and radio were removed, but you could get it as an option, but it kind of defeats the purpose. They went in full out. They came back with the RS variant. RS stands for Rennsport. Now, Porsche was locked in because when you see the RS badging, it just kind of means that this is the pinnacle of the car or of that generation. It spawned an interesting 3.8 liter version of the M64 motor that boasted 300 horsepower, and it was very impressive car. I mean, it was the fastest of its time. Many people, adored it, and it was just, I'm speechless because it was also one of the first cars that came, I think the first RS that came to America, which is why they called it RS America, but it was heavier, it was less horsepower, and American mandates, which made it really, really dumb. Moving on. By the first generation, or the 993, Porsche is getting very serious about making their race cars and homologating them. So in the mid-90s, they would have to homologate their GT2 series car, which came to be known as the 993 GT2, which not only brought the GT nameplate to the 911, but also the GT2. It would be the first of its kind to feature this name, but it would be also referred to GT for the time being, and it made a whopping 444 horsepower at 6,000 RPM, which is very ludicrous for the mid-90s, but Porsche was very much keen on making the best car and just the most quickest thing that you can get. It was also, I'm pretty sure, the very last air-cooled 911 before they switched to the water-cooled with the 996, which getting into now. The 5th generation of 911, or the 996, also brought the GT3 nameplate and the RS. So now you can combine a GT3 RS and GT2 RS, but this generation did not have the GT2 RS just yet. That would be the next one. Now, this is the generation that I'm kind of most confused about, if being completely honest, because many people say the GT3 RS is the best one because it's the more balanced, the easier to control and all that starts. But the GT2, going from back then and nowadays, the GT2 means better than the GT3, even though it has more power and a little bit less things that makes it easier. And people say that because it's less easier to control, it's not as good, and it's meant for all-out speed. But I highly doubt that, because I feel like there'd be no point making a GT2 if you have a GT3 RS, which is already the pinnacle of just going around the track and being good. I'm still on the edge. Please correct me if I'm wrong. If truly the GT3 RS is better than the GT2, that means that one would be the best one. But thinking about it logically, sure, more power doesn't mean always better, and it does add more weight because of the twin turbo setup, but it still has the idea of aerodynamics and all-out performance as the following GT2s do, and the RSs specifically, where they slap a huge engine and turbos, they slap all the stuff from the GT3 and slightly better and call it the GT2 RS. And that's what I'm thinking here. I mean, if the GT2 nameplate has been a thing since back then and now, it should mean the exact same thing, where the GT2 is better than the GT3. Again, please correct me if I'm wrong. And moving on, the 6th generation of the 911, or the 997, took the 996 bar and just increased it by a whole 6,000%, because this is where Porsche, as I stated, started doing the whole GT plus RS name scheme, where the most ludicrous cars being ever made. This is the first time when we saw the 911 GT2 RS nameplate be added and be a thing and be the fastest thing out of its entire generation. Now, it featured the flat 6 twin turbo 3.6 liter, which boasted 612 brake horsepower, which is stupid amount. But I mean, I feel like Porsches, this is the one that you get right before the 991, and I'll get to that soon. But it was one of the quickest ones of its time, as Porsche always is. And it would lap the GTR's time by about a few seconds, if I remember. I think it was 7 seconds on the Nürburgring, which was a very much impressive thing, because the GTR absolutely came in, swung, showed the middle finger to the 911, and then Porsche was like, they're not going to stand it, and they started working on this beast, and they just took the crown back tenfold. So one of the most impressive generations, and the one that really kicked off the whole GTRS, as I stated, and it would be continued to the following generations, which, moving on, talking about it, the 7th generation of 911, or the 991, which is also the generation before the current one, and is still the one that holds the world record of the fastest car of Porsche, at least on the Nürburgring. This is when Porsche, at their all-time peak, biggest brain explosion ever. They said, let's just make the most powerful, most insane car ever. And that was the 911 991 GT2 RS, which completed the Nürburgring time at 6 minutes, 47 seconds, and 3. It made 690 horsepower, and it was just stupid good. Just the fastest thing there is, and for a price point of like what, $250,000 or something like that. And you can also get the Weash package option. Sorry for butchering that, I'm not German, but that would also give you better carbon stuff and lower your weight so you can be even quicker. But not only that, there was a time when Manthey Racing added their parts, which was also a standard option, I'm pretty sure, to the 911, and it was also called the GT2 RS MR. Yeah, it's getting a very complicated name, but it's worth it because it achieved a staggering 6 minutes and 40 seconds and 33. It was 7 seconds faster than the previous world record. That is stupidly good. I can't even pronounce anymore because I'm so flabbergasted. They said, how can we make peak even more peak? And they managed to do it. That is Porsche for you. They do things better because they know they can do better. So this is regarded, in my opinion, and I feel like in everyone's, as the best, the most track capable car of that generation of 911. Moving on to our current generation. The current generation of 911, or the 992, is the GT3 RS, but I'm pretty sure that's been put on hold, or at least they're going to stop making production because they're going to focus on the new updated generation of it, which features hybrids, or mild hybrids if I'm correct. Yeah, I'm not 100% because I don't really care about hybrids. You know, all that performance means gas. Anyways, they might be making a hybrid, but I highly doubt they will. They might experiment with it, I don't know. But at the current moment, the best one of this generation is the GT3 RS, and it has been for quite a bit. It's still very much an impressive car and comes close to the previous two generations, which have stupid high amount of horsepower. And just take this with a grain of salt. Take really everything, because I could be wrong, you know, on a single or every generation. But the next generation should also feature, if going by the same name scheme and idea, the next one should also feature a GT2 RS with a twin turbo setup, which probably might be pushing for 700 horsepower, if not more. If they add a hybrid system, I mean, it could get heavier, but if they maximize it, which is how, you know, Porsche does it, it could have even more horsepower and be even more balanced more than ever, because the batteries and electric motors, I don't know for sure. As I said, I don't follow 911s too closely because, one, I can barely afford one. I'm POV. And two, it is still a very much impressive car. Circling back to the idea of what I said initially, thank you very much for allowing me to have 1,000 views on a single video. It impresses me that I've been able to do such thing, even though it took a few years, but that's what happens when you're dedicated. You just keep doing it, and I guess eventually it happens, which it happened with me. But again, thank you very much. This is, you know, another fun video that I love, where you kind of not educate, but helps people understand, especially people like me who, when I look at a car, when I like a car, I'm like thinking, okay, you know, if a car has multiple generations, kind of what is the best thing for me? And if you're someone who's track focused or wants all out performance most of the time or all the time, this is kind of the video that you would be watching, and I hope you enjoyed. That's about it. See ya.